Hello everyone, and welcome to the Painting Paladin. My name is Justin, and today we are working on one of the most notable characters in the Marvel Universe. He's big, he's green, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry. That's right, it's the Incredible Hulk. Now this model is part of the Marvel Crisis Protocol line by Atomic Mass Games, and is a multi-part plastic kit. So with that being said, let's get started on it, shall we? Alright, now before we begin, I undercoated this model with Gray Sear spray. Now the first color we're going to be using is actually a Vallejo paint called Olive Green, and we're going to paint this all over the skin. Next, we're going to use another Vallejo paint called German Uniform, and we're going to be painting this on the hair. Okay, with that done, we can move on to our next color, and that's going to be Bealton Green. Now we're going to use this to give an all-over wash, all over the hair and body. Now when applying the wash, just make sure to watch for any pools that might form. But if you do get any pools, just use the tip of your brush to soak them back up. Alright, with that wash dried, we can move on to our next color. Now the next color that we're going to be using is actually olive green again, but this time we're going to be applying it as a dry brush. Now if you're not familiar with dry brushing, it's a technique where you load your brush up with paint, wipe most of it off so that only a little remains, and gently brush your paintbrush over the model, catching only the raised areas. Now we're going to be applying this a little bit heavier than we normally would, since it's going to be covering most of the body. Alright, once you're done with the dry brushing, we can move on to our next color, and that's going to be Nagaroth Night. Now we're going to use this to paint the shorts. Now when painting this, just be careful not to get any on that green that you just finished painting. Moving on, the next color that we're going to be using is Xeris Purple, and that's going to be painted right on over that Nagaroth Night. Moving on, the next color that we're going to be using is the contrast paint, Magos Purple. Now we're going to be painting this right on over the top of that Xeris Purple. Okay, with that purple done, the next color that we're going to be using is Xandri Dust. Now we're going to be using this to paint the Hulk's teeth. Alright, with that Xandri Dust applied, the next color that we're going to be using is a wash of Seraphim Sepia right on over those teeth. Next, we're going to use the color Ushabti Bone and paint the raised areas of the teeth, avoiding the recesses where the shade had settled. Okay, with that done, we can move on to our next color, and that's going to be Ulfwan Gray. Now we're going to use this to paint the Hulk's eyes. However, if you're not comfortable with painting eyes, or you just don't feel confident enough that you're going to keep your hand steady, then you can skip over this step. Moving on, the next color that we're going to be using is a Painting Black. Now we're going to use this to paint the pupils of his eyes as well as the Hulk's eyebrows. Alright, with the body of the Hulk all painted up, the next thing we need to paint is the base. Now, I quickly touched up the base with a little bit of grace here before I moved on to this next step. But the next color that we're going to be using is Dawnstone. So just paint that all over the concrete. With that concrete painted, we can move on to our next color, and that's going to be Lead Belcher. Now we're just using this to paint the manhole. Alright, with that manhole painted, the next color that we're going to be using is Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to give the base an all-over wash. Now just like what we did with Spider-Gwen, we're going to be using some tissue paper to kind of smudge it a little bit and wipe some up too, so that the base is patchy and not uniform. Alright, with that done, all that's left to do is paint that rim around the base. Now you're going to want to paint it to match the color of the rest of your miniatures, and for me, I'm using a Painting Black. Alright, now that we finished painting him up, Hulk is ready to go smash. Now, a few things to remember when painting this model. The first is, when painting something that's based on something, it's helpful to have the box art or reference material nearby. That way you know what colors go where. Another thing is, when painting bigger models, be extra mindful for pooling when using washes. But if you get pools, just use the tip of your brush to soak them up. And lastly, as always, take your time to avoid making any mistakes. But if you make any mistakes, you can always go back to your previous colors and correct it. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to stay up to date with future videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone!